What's happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel, where for today's video, thanks to Shozy Store, we're going to be checking out the Bloks, Transformers, Rise of the Beasts, Optimus Prime versus Optimus Primal 3-pack. Now, if you would like this or the previously reviewed Scourge versus Bumblebee set, then definitely be sure to head down to the links in the description box below. But as we very quickly check out the packaging, included is one jungle diorama, Optimus Primal in both Beast and Robot mode, and then finally Optimus Prime. Now, these three are model kits. They are slightly more advanced when compared to some of the YOLO Park sets, yet are still quite straightforward to put together. So let's assemble these guys and let's check them out individually, and then let's combine them to see what beast we can create. So, up first, here is the leader of the Autobots, Optimus Prime. So, the build process for all three of these is a little more complicated when compared to some of the YOLO Park sets, although thankfully, every single component is pre-painted, you don't require no clippers nor no glue, so it's still quite a straightforward process, and it's quite fun to go through, and this Optimus Prime, I think, is looking banging. Now, we did previously check this figure out in the last video, although for the 3-pack, he has been completely decked out head to toe in metallic, and I do think he looks better. So, as we take a look at the details, the face sculpt has been so nicely designed, a little stylized. I believe the whole idea of these Bloks characters is they're supposed to be kind of chibi-like, but still very accurate to what we saw from the movie. I love the attention to detail of the Matrix chamber sculpted beneath the chest windows of Prime. That is such a great touch, and I love all of the mechanical paneling that you can see for the torso, and in particular on the side part of the arm. That is so sweet. Even the insides of the legs have been accurately detailed to match the CG design, as so have the feet. And as we spin this Prime round here to the back, check that out. He even has the Super 6 spinal column, which I love about this Optimus Prime design. It's just a really cool figure. Despite him being quite small in terms of scale, I think they've packed a shed ton of detail and articulation, which I'll be sure to showcase later on in the video. But let's see what accessories this Prime is packing. Stand down! So, first up, we do get his ion arm cannon, which I think is brilliant. You know, over the past couple of months, I have begun to love this design, maybe even slightly more than the ion blaster that we saw for the B movie, but I really like how it appears as if though it's actually transformed out of his forearm, much like we saw in the film, and check out that metallic red. It does look super brilliant. Now, every single one of these Bloks figures has a built-in internal LED system. In order to activate it, you simply give them a harsh bump on the back, and bang! Check that out. Prime's eyes do illuminate. Trust me, it will come across a little better in natural lighting. My review station lights are super intense, but once activated, you can then open the chest windows of Optimus Prime to reveal the Matrix chamber in more detail. Now, sadly, no Matrix is beneath this, but I do like how the LED kind of shines through the center to give you the impression that if he needed to, he can most definitely light your darkest hour. And then finally, much like the Bumblebee vs Scourge set, every single one of these guys includes 2 display bases with 2 blast effects, and I find these great, especially for getting these figures into some of the more slightly dynamic poses. Now, next up, we have another Optimus, although this one is Primal. And strangely enough, the 3-pack version is completely cast in transparent plastic. I'm not quite sure as to why they've decided to go down this route, but still very nicely detailed. I mean, check out the faceplate design. This does seem to be pretty accurate to what we saw from the movie. I also really like how they made the Maximal insignia green. Trust me, this is going to look great when we illuminate it in just a bit. But despite this being cast out of transparent plastic, you can definitely see some of the fur texture that would carry over from the base mode. The mechanical detail I still think looks pretty great, especially as we spin this guy around here to the back. Much like Optimus Prime, Primal also has some piston detail as well as a really sick looking spinal column. So it's definitely a pretty sweet looking Primal, but let's check out what firepower and weapons this guy's packing. So the first would of course have to be his iconic Beast Wars Cyber Blades. These, much like the figure, have been pretty decently detailed to match what we saw from the movie. And one thing which I thought was really cool is that they can combine, much like we see when Primal goes head to head against Battletrap. Now, unlike Optimus Prime, this Primal includes interchangeable hands, so in addition to the pair of fisted ones, we get a pair of Mr. Beast hands. So these ones are a little more expressive. I really like the individual segmented joints that you can see on every single one of the fingers, and these are just great, especially for getting Optimus Primal into some of the more slightly dynamic poses. And another accessory that Primal includes that Prime does not would be a retracted mouthpiece. So I think this is really cool, a great throwback to how he originally looked in the OG Beast Wars series. And as I mentioned previously, all of these guys have built-in LEDs, so a harsh bump on the back should activate those. The maximal insignia does illuminate, as so do the eyes. And in darker lighting conditions, that LED pretty much lights up the entire torso. So I guess that's why this version is completely cast in transparent plastic, so that you can kind of see the energon of the Maximals internally. But yeah, it's quite a cool looking figure. And then finally for Primal, included is a display base. Very similar to Optimus Prime, although this time we have some Primal details, and the blast effects are cast in a very sick looking Maximal green. And saving what I think is undoubtedly the best for last, here we have Optimus Primal fully transformed into his beast mode. Now, much like the previously released Scourge, this is so nicely detailed, although I'm not quite sure as to why he's been completely cast and painted in grey instead of black. I definitely remember him being a little darker in the movie, but as we check out the details, look at that Primal face sculpt. I think this looks so nicely done. You can even see a bit of bow damage there to the left-hand part of his head. The torso is so nicely detailed, especially with the overlapping mechanical panels. I think the arms look great, as so do the legs. I mean, we even get some piston details there on the forearms, and as you spin him around here to the back, much like his robot mode counterpart, he has the super sick spinal column and a monkey ass, which too has been pretty nicely detailed. So robot mode wise, I think this guy's looking brilliant. Now, considering his LED is a little more trigger happy when compared to the previous two, let's just maximize this guy to life. So a harsh bump on the back, bang, there is Optimus Primal illuminated. And I think this is the best LEDs out of the three. And if you open up the jaw, check this out. The entire mouth does illuminate. And unlike any of the previous Hasbro Optimus Primals, this guy even has the repulsor that we briefly see in the movie. But let's see what accessories he's packing. So, in addition to the pair of fisted hands, we get a pair of crouching hands, which really do help aid the look that we saw in the movie when he's on all fours. So pretty nicely detailed. I really do like the position of the thumbs and the fingers. Really does match what we saw from the film. But probably my favourite out of the entire bunch, we get a pair of grabbing hands. So now he can finally rip the spark out of Scourge. And much like the previous bunch, super nicely detailed. I really like, again, how you can see all of the segmented joints on the inside of the palm. That is really awesome. And then to round things off completely for Primal, much like the previous two, we get the same display base with some Beast Mode Primal graphics and some pretty awesome blast effects. Now let's run through the articulation for you guys. So, to kickstart things off with, Primal does have a ball joint at the head, which can look up, down, tilt side to side, and rotate left to right. The shoulder pads can hinge both up and down, as so can the shoulder itself. It can then crunch forwards and backwards, rotate all the way around. The outwards range is a little limited due to the chunky design of the shoulder pad, but we then get a 90-degree bend there at the elbow, a bicep swivel, and every single pair of hands is on a ball joint, so this can hinge back, forth, up, down, rotate left to right. The waist can also rotate the full 360. Unfortunately, the hip range going forwards is quite limited due to the skirt design, and it really can't go back too far due to the big old monkey ass, but the hips can hinge out to the sides. There is then a thigh swivel just above the knee, 90-degree bend here at the knee, and then finally the ankles can rock forwards, backwards, and tilt side to side and rotate the full 360. And then the beast mode for Optimus Primal is completely different. So the head is on a ball joint. This will look down, it will look up. Although unfortunately the range of motion going left to right is pretty much non-existent. And it's because they've added this additional neck detail so that when you do bring the head forward, it looks like it's one complete sculpt. Had they not given us this, then I'm pretty certain this would have been hollow. Although undoubtedly the range of motion probably would have been a bit better. So yeah, that does kind of suck. But the jaw can open and close, which is sick. I mean, check out the teeth detail. That is super cool. The butterfly joints on this figure are insane. I mean, check out how far back they can crunch. That is brilliant. The shoulders can rotate all the way around, hinge out to the sides, way better than his robot mode version, so that's pretty cool. Rotation at the bicep, 90-degree bend here at the elbow. ball jointed wrists, the torso will crunch backwards more than it can forward. So again, that's a little limiting, but we then get a side to side tilt, rotate left to right here at the waist. The hips will kick forwards, backwards, and out to the side slightly. Unfortunately, due to the way this has been sculpted, there is no knee cut at all, which I think is something they maybe could have given this guy. But then finally, the ankles are on ball joints, so these will pivot forwards, backwards, as well as rotate all the way around. So the articulation is definitely decent, and you do have to bear a few things in mind. These are model kits, and they are definitely a lot smaller than some of the previously released Rise of the Beast sets. And if you decide to order the 3-pack, you do get included the scene where Optimus Prime and Primal very first meet each other in the Rise of the Beast movie, so this is great. Very easy to assemble this. I believe the backing is made out of some kind of plastic. It definitely doesn't feel as if though it's going to break anytime soon, although it's quite flexible, and we then get a pair of additional clear blast effects to attach onto the base. Now, as we check out a few comparisons, on the left-hand side we have the 3-pack Optimus Prime compared alongside the right, which is the regular retail release. Now, both are banging, but I'm going to be real with you guys. I do think the super sick metallic spray over looks so much nicer on this 3-pack version than the matte finish that we have here on the regular edition. Next up, here we have the robot mode of Optimus Primal, and then we have him fully transformed into his beast mode. And surprisingly, despite both of these guys being quite small, I think this scale is pretty smack on to when these characters very first meet each other in the movie. Here is Beast Primal compared alongside the previously released Scourge, who I think so far is their best figure today. This guy looks banging, and Primal 2 is very nicely detailed. Honestly, I'm not quite sure between the two which is my favourite, but I think it's Scourge. He has such a sick design. Here is how his robot form stacks up alongside his nemesis, and unfortunately we never actually saw Primal in robot mode against Scourge in the movie, which honestly I think was one of the biggest letdowns of the movie. And then finally, hopefully to give you guys a sense of scale, here they both are stacked up alongside the Studio Series Deluxe Class Bumblebee. And just before we round things off, much like I showcased in the previous video, all of the limbs of the robot forms are cross-compatible. Although I would avoid using the clear Optimus Primal at all costs, because unfortunately the shoulder joint has cracked clean off, so only stick with the characters which have solid plastic. Unfortunately, the ball pegs on the Optimus Primal Beast mode are way too big for the standard pegs of the generic robot forms. Maybe if they decide to bring out any Beast mode Maximals in the future, maybe that Primal will be compatible with those. I hope they give us more characters in the future. It would be super sick to maybe weaponize this up with an armored battle trap, some pieces of Cheetor and Rhinox. I think it's really cool, and if you have Bumblebee, maybe you can also pack a few of those pieces on to spruce up the colour. And so, wrapping up on this review for the Bloks 3-pack. Personally, I really like this set, although I was a huge fan of the previously reviewed Bumblebee vs Scourge pack. I know the designs are a little strange in the sense that they're not proportionally accurate to the actual CG models, but I think that makes them look kind of cool, and surprisingly, despite them being quite small, the details are on point, especially with the Optimus Prime. He looks fantastic. The assembly process is a little more involved when compared to some of the Yolo Park sets, but it's still super straightforward because you don't require any additional pieces. So if these are something which appeal to you, definitely be sure to head down to those links in the description box below. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who checked this video out, and until my next review, transform and roll out!